Peace. Islam. Chickamauga, Alabama, coming at y'all live. Deep down. Alabama, Arabian country. Checking in from Cusseta, so-called Cusseta, so-called Alabama or Alabama. So you got a town of Cusseta on both sides. You know what I'm saying? But it just goes to show that this was the Cusseta is like it's definitely an old Muslim district. Because again, once the Barbary governments was, like the way they have counties and cities and towns now, that's nothing new. They took that from us. So, if you might have lived in a district that might have been named Cusseta, when everything was dissolved and they were rewriting history after 1865, they would say, oh, that was the Cusseta tribe or something. You know what I mean? Because everything was, the whole play was, the Muslim civilization was an advanced civilization. You know what I mean? The Moorish civilization, whatever so-called, not just Muslim, Yahudi, whatever. It was an advanced civilization. But their whole thing was to rewrite history for the new industrialization and everything, and to elevate through eugenics and to elevate a new phenotype as being like the smartest and the most capable and everything, because it was all a play. Again, certain people are easier to control. So, when you're trying to set up a more socialist type of demonstration where people need to do what they're told and bow down and just take orders, that's really why they needed the eugenics, to elevate a certain phenotype. That's just what it was. So everything else had to be made to look primitive. So even if you had a county, an old district that we might have had called so-called Cusseta in a new rewritten history, it all had to be primitive. So it was a tribe. And they reduced a type of tribal demonstration to folks running around with rocks and spears. So again, it's all a play, man. But the old civilization was just as advanced or more advanced than anything now. Because honestly, a lot of the technology now is kind of play compared to the old organic technology and stuff that we used to have. But came across another interesting marker. It's just, again, we dismantling all the slave narrative and all that stuff. We showing that we come from our own country. Our country had nothing to do with the present demonstration. And that's why we were written out of history, is because we had a country that was taken down and they needed to kind of rewrite history. You know what I'm saying? It's denationalization. You know what I mean? The reason why, again, you were lost is because they wrote your country out of history. So, but this is an interesting marker. We're gonna check this marker out and read it. And it's very telling. Let's put it like that. So, this marker, check out the marker. Fort Casita, Chambers County. Okay? So let's read this marker. It says, following the signing of the Creek Treaty in 1832, and we always talking about all these treaties and all these land cessions and everything. So, so following the signing of the Creek Treaty in 1832, the early white settlers constructed a 16 by 30 foot hand-hewn log fort for protection against a possible Indian uprising from the Cusseta or the Cusseta Indian village. The Cusseta Indian village. Okay? They said they constructed the fort for protection against a possible Indian uprising from Cusseta Indian village on the Assimilation Creek just north of here. Walls of the fort were 4 by 6 feet high with portholes at a height of 4 feet, still visible after 140 years. It was the last known fort of its kind in the southeast. Okay, so check this out. So you were supposed to be like a slave on a plantation and all that stuff. Like you was out in the fields working. The light Negroes was all in the house. You know what I mean, with the slave master and all that stuff. You was on the plantation around this time, right? But this marker just said. This marker literally just said, in 1832, the so-called white so-called settlers, and again, we're not dealing with color or anything like that, but the settlers, they just got here in 1832. We just dissolved the patrols. We just dissolved a lot of the government. We still had our own towns and everything, but we dissolved a lot of the patrolling and the highway patrols and the slide patrols and the Barbary patrols that we were doing, so they could finally come up in here. Okay, now it just said that they needed to build a dang on fort and a wall around their little whatever setup they were coming around here with, because they was afraid of a possible Indian uprising. Now, Cusseta was an old Moorish town, and it stayed a Moorish town. You know what I'm saying? Now, they just came in, but they still scared. They just moving into this area, but they scared of a Indian or Moorish uprising in 1832. But you're supposed to be a slave, bro. You had your own setups. You know what I mean? Like they were just getting here, and they were scared. They were terrified to even come out here. This is why, even to this day, they had the big old what they call it, Karen movement or whatever, because that comes from them in their DNA understanding the history of us patrolling the land and arresting and kidnapping and doing. We were the marauders, man. We maintain the order in the land. So yeah, if you got caught, you got arrested, just like they'll arrest you now. It's always been like that. So when they came down here, and they were like, finally, we can move into the south around these Moors or whatever and do business or whatever without them beating the brakes off us. We still scared. They literally still building, like in 1832, they building the fort so you won't come out of your town and ransack their stuff in 1832. But you're supposed to be a slave. Come on, man. I mean, let's just keep it a buck. So, and then, okay, this is another very telling thing. Around the time of the Jim Crow era, because if you look at the pictures of everybody in the Jim Crow era, you can tell that they had everybody being good, like so-called good Christians. So if you look at the antebellum period and even the Reconstruction period, you see a lot of men in longer, looser garbs with beards and stuff like that, all in the South, really all over the country, but all in the South. But if you look in the early 1900s, when these people started really getting power, everybody's all clean shaven. You're wearing your suit. You're real neat. I guarantee you, back then, certain places, if you was our phenotype Mississippian and you walked around with a beard, you would have had somebody say something to you like, boy, what you got that beard for? You know what I'm saying? Because they remember you in your rightful state, and you did not play around. You know what I'm saying? But so you had a Moorish town of Cusseta. Now as time went on, after the war and everything, you lost your nation, you lost all that stuff. In the Civil War, in the Jim Crow era, they would have called these a town like Cusseta, because these towns were still in existence all over the place. A lot of them slowly abandoning, you know what I mean? But you go to a lot of these little towns, they still got Mississippian majorities. But you know what they call a lot of these towns? They call them nigger towns. You know what I'm saying? Like, to this day, they just said it was an Indian village. Indian became nigger. You know what I mean? Nigger town. You can look up a lot of old videos of Europeans referring to a place as nigger town, or African town, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's nothing new. It used to be Indian town. It used to be Moorish town. Just like Selma's old name was Moore's Bluff. These is our towns, man. They was coming in your turf. You was finally letting them come in your turf. You wasn't nobody's damn slave. They literally up here talking about they was afraid that you was about to do an uprising, because they remember how you used to whoop. They remember how you used to keep a boot up ass. They remember how you used to put a boot up everybody's ass all over the country. So they still shaking. They still shaking in 1832 coming down here. Come on, man, wake up, man. You know what I'm saying? So, you know what I'm saying? Oh shit. But anyway, yeah, just getting that out the paint. And then this is another thing. See, they always been salty about how we used to roll, how we used to have these prosperous towns. We were doing our own thing. You would get arrested. You would get, you got put in your place by the old Muslims. So they were salty about that for a long time. So after they got the control in the Jim Crow era and all that, they would start making up these racist cartoons, you know what I'm saying, and all this stuff. And that's a lot of time when the Hollywood propaganda started, where they would have these racist cartoons with a lot of the fat mammies. But the thing you should check out about these cartoons is they got the fat mammies and all the black with their lips all big and all that stuff, but they wearing the wraps. They got their heads wrapped. So they telling you was Muslim back in the day. You know what I'm saying? But they, again, they wanted it to make fun of all that, and because they were still salty. And one interesting cartoon series that they had, racist cartoon series they had in the early 40s. Because remember, all that came from all of them being all salty and stuff. That comes from when you used to handle your business in this land and you didn't play. You will go up somebody's head real quick for getting out of line. You know what I'm saying? That's just the American way. It's real. It's tough men rule in America. You know what I'm saying? It ain't no bow down to no king and lames get to come to the top. It's like that now in a corporate demonstration. But the real America ain't never been like that. It's cowboy. You feel me? So they had this cartoon called, it was called Lazy Town. I forget the name of the cartoon, but the town that the Negroes that was in the cartoon, this racist cartoon, it was called Lazy Town. You know what I'm saying? Because they was talking about you lazy and all that, but that was their way of admitting. And then had the Negroes all shifty, shiftless, and laying around and not doing anything. They had the mammies with their heads wrapped, all type of goofball stuff. But that was their way of letting you know. They was hating on them old Moorish Indian towns that you used to have. That's their way of telling you, we can't stand y'all, but y'all did have y'all own towns. We gonna make fun of y'all and dish y'all talking about some lazy town. You know what I'm saying? But that's reminiscent of the Cusseta towns, where you put boots up ass. You know what I'm saying? And they were still scared in 1832. So who was somebody's slave, man? So man, just doing the knowledge, and then again, just wanted to drive it home, another point home again about, in a couple of drops ago, we talked about the Free African Society and how they created that in the late 1700s. These were the lames, you know what I'm saying? They couldn't be Muslim. They didn't want to be Muslim. They wanted to start their new, their so-called Christian thing. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's never been our, in our blood. That type of culture has never been in the Mississippi and American blood. But these lames, you know what I'm saying, who started the Free African Society and the AME and all of that, the AME Church and all that. If you look at the story, these lames was talking about how they were suffering discrimination from the Methodist Church or whatever. And I want to drive it home. All these, and they were talking about there was some freed slaves. And I told y'all the freed slave narrative is about these people leaving their culture one way or another and assimilating. That's a freed slave. Because if you were in the old culture, they were telling you were a slave. Because again, that was a culture of order. That was a culture led by real leaders. You had to follow laws. So that's slavery to these people, because they don't have no discipline. They don't have no self-control. They have to be able to do whatever they want to do. They want to party, get drunk, eat pork. This is what they do. You know what I'm saying? So a real conservative, disciplined culture is slavery to them. So when you came out of that, you was a free slave or free African or whatever goofy stuff they want to talk about. But these fools was talking about they were being discriminated against by the Methodist Church. Let me tell you what was really going on in those days, and still goes on to this day, which is why you get hated on by a lot of these lames and squares. And if you a real one, like yours truly, and again, me personally, I came up in a middle class, working class family. So I've never, I ain't never struggled or nothing like that. I've never been rich or nothing like that, but I never struggled. You know what I'm saying? And I'm proud of that, because we don't come from that. We come from noble, prosperous stuff. So celebrating, and again, a lot of the hoods, the so-called hoods and all that, these used to be rich communities, but they were economically devastated because they've been put under siege. You know what I'm saying? But we got to a point where we celebrated dysfunction and all that. There's no reason to do that. You should be trying to prosper and celebrate prosperity. But anyway, a lot of these squares, even to this day, a lot of these squares who take these corporate situations and all that, and they lose themselves. They get around all these other foreigners and other nations and stuff, and they try to blend in and fit in. And then over time, they develop type of animosity towards the ones who didn't do that. It happens to this day in this neighborhood, but it was even happening back then. See, these people up here were talking about they was getting discriminated against in the Methodist Church by from lighter-skinned Europeans or whatever. The reason why these people who converted over, but they look like us, were suffering this discrimination was because on the colonies, they could only go past a certain point. The people, the lighter, fairer looking people, everybody, if you was on that newer Christian demonstration or whatever, this is just how it was, not right or wrong. Not hating on no religion, because you got freedom of religion in America. But if you were on that demonstration, you could not go freely into the rest of the country past that proclamation line. You just couldn't. You know what I'm saying? Without getting bagged up. You just couldn't. So the lighter skinned Europeans and these people, they took their frustration out, because they knew when they went out into the real land, They might, you know, they might get knocked upside their head or something like that by a real one like me. They said the Indians, you know, they basically the Indians are, you know, they'll beat the brakes off us for talking crazy. So on those colonies, when they would see people of the same phenotype, you know, assimilating and bowing down, they were frustrated by that. They were like, man, you know, we can't do nothing with these real wild Moors out here. So, but I see a goofy kind of Negro sitting right next to me. I'm gonna treat him like crap because I'm mad because I go out here and these boys knock me upside my head. You know what I'm saying, for being out of bounds. That's all that is. And even to this day, like y'all, you got some of these people to be in their little jobs, and you know, a lot of people will take jobs and they won't lose themselves. But to the people who do, they'll be in these little jobs, these corporate situations, and they'll lose who they are. They want to fit in and blend in. But then, you know, they may have somebody from another nation who is working with them, and that person might have had a bad experience because they might have went into a neighborhood and ran into a real one. And you know, we just don't play like that. So they might have said something out the way, or had a bad interaction, because you already know the Moorish blood is hot-blooded. You know what I'm saying? Just goofball stuff is just not going to be tolerated. So they might have had a bad experience, and they couldn't do anything because of the power that the real cat had. So they'll go back into their situation where it's controlled, and they can be weak. The weak can kind of prosper in their little controlled environment, their corporate environment, and they're gonna crack little racist jokes and make little, you know what I'm saying, little references, and basically just humiliate you because they are frustrated. Yeah, because they are frustrated because they see the real ones out there that they can't do nothing with, even to this day. You know what I'm saying? They got to call the police and all, you know what I mean? Even to this day. You know what I mean? So they're gonna take their frustration out on you lames and you squares, and that's exactly what a lot of y'all get. And then you want to come out and talk, well, y'all need to do better, pull up y'all pants and all this. No. It's you. You know what I'm saying? You lost who you are. You lost your fight. You lost your warrior spirit. Don't come down on a lot of the youth is messed up and all of that, but don't come down on them just because you went up in there, assimilated, and lost who you were. You the coward. You know what I'm saying? You the lame. You the square. And just because you get a job don't make you a lame or a square. Because I done had plenty of jobs in my life, but I never lost who I was. I done been in plenty of situations with all the nations, but I never lost who I was. And everybody always knew that. But a lot of y'all did that. And that happened way back then with that free African mess. That's why they was always hating and willing to take whatever agenda they were given, because they was hating, because the real ones didn't give it up. We still did our thing, still prospered. You know what I'm saying? We still did our thing, still prospered. And these little goofies that they were trying to assimilate with couldn't stand it. So they would take their frustration out on the goofies, on the goofy, you know what I'm saying, Negroid looking phenotype sitting right next to them. So, you know, but anyway, just doing the knowledge. Again, this is 1832. Cusseta, a Moorish town in so-called Alabama. These settlers came down here and they were still scared in 1832. What plantation was you on in 1832? If you were still Muslim. So anyway, man, that's peace, man. I'll tap back in with y'all later.